Hi, it's Katie, and today I'm going to show you how to make sausage and lentils, or lentils and sausage, however you want to think about it. This is a really great recipe. My family loves it. It's one of our favorites. It's very warming and comforting for cold nights, and it's really simple to whip up. You can make it with just a few ingredients, and they're things that I always have on hand, so it's one of those fallback meals. And the best part is you can cook it from frozen. So if something falls through or you don't have a plan for dinner that night and it's dinner time now, you can pull things out of the freezer and the pantry, and you don't have to have them thawed or soaked or anything like that. Just throw them together, and in about 20 minutes you can have a really warm, comforting, and somewhat healthy meal. So I'll show you the ingredients down here. You can switch it up too based on what you have, but this is my sort of basic usual, and then I'll show you how you can switch it up. So I have spicy Italian sausages. There's 5 in this package. I don't usually use all 5, although you could if you wanted to. If you have the sweet Italian sausages, you could use that as well. Just add some red pepper flakes. If you don't like spicy food, I would still recommend adding some red pepper flakes, just because lentils can be sort of bland and earthy, so a little bit of spice will wake them up a little bit. So you can add just a little bit, but I do recommend adding some. So I have spicy Italian sausages, and I'm going to add some sage. So this is just some sage out of the garden. You could use dried sage, you know, out of the jar, no problem at all. Or what you could do is use breakfast sausage, which often has the sage flavor in it, and add the red pepper flakes. Or if you had just ground pork or ground beef, then you could just add red pepper flakes and sage, or ground turkey, or whatever you had. So these are still frozen. I'm going to cook them from frozen. So I just took these out of my freezer 30 seconds ago. The lentils that I'm using are these little green lentils, or I guess sometimes they're called brown lentils, or you can use the black lentils, sometimes called beluga lentils. Those are really good. I would not use red lentils. I mean, you could use them, but your finished dish will be quite different because the red lentils tend to cook all the way down, whereas these will hold their shape somewhat. So I just buy a big bag of these. I keep them in this canister, and they cook really quickly, so you don't need to pre-soak them, and they don't take hours to boil on the stovetop like other beans. And then for just veggies and flavorings, I'm just going to use an onion. Very simple. Always have onions on hand, and some carrots. I always have carrots on hand. So all of this stuff is things that I normally have, nothing special or outrageous. And then just a little bit of salt and pepper, and if you want to use stock, you can use chicken stock, vegetable stock, whatever you have. I tend to usually just use water. So I'm going to start by cooking my frozen sausage. There goes my onion. You can do this in a regular pan. It just will take a tiny bit longer. I'm going to use my pressure cooker, and that's how I can make this meal from these dried and frozen and raw ingredients to having it on my table in just like 15 or 20 minutes. So I have my pressure cooker, and I'm going to throw my sausages in, and I'm just going to put about, I don't know, a cup of water in there. My pressure cooker has guidelines that says that you should use at least half a cup of liquid when you use the pressure cooker. So just follow whatever your guidelines are on your pressure cooker if they have a specific guideline. So I just throw them straight in, frozen sausages, straight into my pressure cooker. If they were thawed, that's no problem. You would just, continue with the same step. You would just cook it a little bit less at this point. If your sausages were thawed, what I would do is I would brown them in the bottom of the pressure cooker with a little bit of oil. Just brown them up and make a little bit of extra flavor. But this dish has plenty of flavor, so it's not like you're missing out if you aren't able to brown them. So I'm going to add 1 cup of water, and I'm going to pressure cook these for like 6 to 8 minutes or something like that, and that should get them mostly cooked, if not all the way cooked, and it will also make a broth with this water and the juices that come out of the sausage. So I'll turn it on high and seal her up. And you want to time your cooking time after it comes to pressure. So while it's heating up, it will take a little bit because they're frozen, but because you're only using a cup of water, it's not going to take, a ton of time. So while that is happening, I am going to rinse my lentils, and I just put them in a strainer and rinse them under some running water. And I don't measure, so I don't know how much I usually use. I'd say like maybe 1.5 cups to 2 cups. You could add more or less depending on if you want it soupier or thicker and heartier, and it also depends on how many sausages you're using. So just give them a quick rinse just to knock off any dirt and dust, and also I just kind of check over them to make sure there's no rocks or anything like that. This brand that I use, I forget the name of the brand, but I can recognize the packaging. I've never had a problem. They're always very high quality, so I don't check them as closely as some people check their beans. Maybe I'll regret that one day. So next I'm just going to get my veggies ready. So I will chop my onion and peel and chop up my carrots. So my timer just went off on my pressure cooker, so 6 minutes. So I just turned the burner off, and I'm just going to move it to a cold burner until it releases pressure. So that will just take just a couple minutes because there's only a cup of liquid in there, so it's not like there's a bunch of liquid keeping the pressure cooker hot. If you don't have a pressure cooker, you can just do this in a pan. Just add an inch of water or so and just kind of simmer the sausage until they're thawed and cooked all the way through or mostly through. They don't have to be cooked all the way through. So then here I have my lentils that have been rinsed, and my carrot, my onion, and my sage. While the sausage was cooking, I did run out to the garden. I grabbed some, did you hear that? That was the pressure releasing on my pressure cooker. I have some Swiss chard and kale, just a little bit. I just wanted to make use of it. It's like the last little bit of these plants from the garden. So I'm gonna add that. You can add all sorts of things. You can add frozen spinach, any kind of greens is really good. You can add tomatoes, you can add potatoes, zucchini, any sort of root vegetable, sweet potatoes, turnips, things like that. Any kind of leafy greens, pretty much anything your family likes you can add to it. Because it sort of all stews together, you just have to understand how vegetables work. So leafy greens you usually add at the end. Root vegetables you would add at the beginning with your carrots and your onions, and things like zucchini, which are pretty tender, you would add at the end. So my pressure came down on my pressure cooker, so I will open this up and show you what it looks like. So inside are the sausages, and also you can see a lot of the sort of juices and fat came out of the sausages, and it's turned that water that I cooked the sausages into a nice orange color with all of the flavors from the spices. What I do is I prick the skins. I don't know if you can see when I prick the skins, some juices come rushing out. You can do this with sausage because, woo, that one's spurting. Because, you know, sausages are usually pretty fatty, so it's not like they're going to get dried out or anything. If you cook them from frozen and if you kind of steal away all of their juices, they're still going to be plenty succulent. So I just do this for a couple reasons. One, to flavor that liquid, which we're going to cook our lentils in. And two, because I'm going to cut these up if they are kind of have all that hot oil under the skin. When I slice them, it's just gonna spurt all over my hand and burn me and make a mess and run all over my cutting board. So we're gonna cut these all up into little pieces, so just jab them a couple times all over, give that oil a chance to come out, or what's gonna come out into that cooking liquid. You can see there. And then, depending on how much time you have, you can remove the sausages to a plate and let them cool, or you can just kind of cut them straight away. So I just take them one at a time and bring them back to my cutting board here. And these are pretty hot, so I just use my fork and I cut them into slices or chunks, however suits you. So if you have less meat, I would cut it into smaller pieces. If you have more meat, you could do larger pieces. You could even just leave the sausages whole. I generally make less than one sausage per person. I really like how the lentils stretch for this meal, so I don't have to have that many sausages in, just for cost savings and for reducing our meat consumption. So I like to cut them up so each bite will have a little bit of sausage. You could dice it up too, or if you're just using like bulk sausage, then you could just kind of fry it up and crumble it up. So that's the first sausage. I'll just go ahead and cut them all up. But you see how by poking them whenever I slice into them, not very much juice is coming out all over my cutting board, so it's more manageable that way. So let me cut all these up, and then basically all you have to do is throw everything back in the pressure cooker and cook until the lentils and the vegetables are soft. So my sausages are fully cooked. If they weren't fully cooked, for whatever reason, it doesn't really matter. The only reason why I cooked them at all is A, because they were frozen. I wouldn't have been able to slice them frozen easily, and B, to help them retain their shape. Sometimes if you have thawed sausages and you cut them, they kind of mush down. So if you're gonna cook them additional amount of time here in the pressure cooker, so if they still have a little bit of pink in the center, that's no problem. So everything that you've collected here, you're going to put back in with all of that flavored cooking liquid. Now there was just about a cup in there, plus whatever juices came out of the sausage. You're also going to get some juices that come out of the vegetables. At this point, I'm going to add a little bit more water. Probably another 3/4 of a cup, maybe a full cup. And you can add more water later. So unless you know you want it really soupy, I would kind of err on the side of caution. Also depends on how much vegetables you use, because a lot of liquid will come out of the pressure cooker, or out of the vegetables with the pressure cooker, since the pressure cooker steams and traps all the steam. So you can see the lentils are almost covered. When I tilt it, it doesn't look like it, but they're covered mostly. So I'm just going to put this back on the heat. And again, it's only going to take, I'd say, like 8 minutes once it comes up to pressure. And while that's working, I'm going to go ahead and cut up my Swiss chard. If I was adding tomatoes, I would cut those up or get canned tomatoes ready. And, any sort of tender vegetables I would add at the end. So I'm going to cut this up. This would also be a good time to wash whatever dishes you have in your sink, whatever dishes you've made while you've been cooking, or things that you haven't gotten to yet today. And also a good time to make a salad if you want to make a salad. Just use your time wisely so that when this is done shortly, you'll be ready to sit down and eat. So this is just chopped up very simply. I will just throw that in. Leafy greens like this, I really just put them in the hot lentils after I take them off pressure, and I usually don't really cook them past that point. I just let the heat from the dish wilt them down. If you're using a heartier, something like a zucchini, then you would just simmer it for an extra 2 or 3 minutes till it was tender. So I'm going to let this come up to pressure, and like I said, cook it about 6 to 8 minutes, and then I'll show you what it looks like. Alright, my timer just went off for 6 minutes, so I turned my burner off, and I'm just going to quick release the pressure. The reason why I use quick release is because A, there's more food in here, so it would take longer to naturally release, and also I want to retain some of the heat so that I can cook my greens. So that's what it looks like right now, and that's how soupy it is. So you can add more and definitely serve this as a soup, or you can let it cook without the lid on for a couple minutes and reduce it down a little bit. What I tend to do is kind of mash up some of the lentils, and it makes sort of a thicker gravy. So I'm going to throw my Swiss chard and kale in and just seal it back up. Well, let me stir it in, and then I'll seal it back up and just let it sit on this hot burner, and that should be enough to cook the greens. And while that's kind of heating through, I emptied my dishwasher and I'm making salads. So I have my salads here. These are for tonight. These are for our lunches tomorrow. Getting my sink cleaned out and my dishwasher emptied. So I will check on that again in just 4 minutes or so. Alright, so it's been probably closer to 40 minutes since I started, but that was also with me talking and filming, and I made my salads, I cleaned my sink, I emptied my dishwasher, I emptied my compost, and I changed a diaper. And here is my dinner. You can serve this with bread, with rice, eat it as is. You can add any sort of extra veggies to it that you want. Frozen spinach is really good to add in the last few minutes. So I hope you enjoyed this recipe. Give it a try. Let me know your variations. Leave comments down below if you try it, and whatever you add to it, I'd love to hear, because I'm always kind of playing with it and trying new things. So hope you liked the video. Give my video a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys, and thank you so much for watching.